You are now listening to the Connecting Creators podcast. Here we explore the topics and guest stories to better understand how creators think, how they connect with their audience, and ultimately, how they create. Welcome back to another episode of the Connecting Creators podcast. Today we have an amazing guest, and I'll let Steph give you the little rundown since, he already previously knows her.
We have a very special Olympian guest here, Marissa Papaconstantinou, and we're just going to talk about her journey, just to get a different viewpoint for someone who is in that rare 1% of being a bronze medalist.
Yeah.
Marissa, thanks for joining the show, and we're really happy and excited to have you.
Of course, thanks for having me, and it's really good to see you, Steph. It's been a while since high school, but yeah, you've been doing amazing too. So it's really cool to see both of us really excelling. And I mean, Steph was the valedictorian of our graduating class, so scholar, all around great athlete there.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I seen that early on you were involved in a lot of sports like tennis, basketball, soccer, things like that. So what was it about track that grabbed your interest? Was it just something that you were good at, or was it a passion before that?
It's a good question. I think in elementary school, I always was really interested in track and field, mostly in the field events like long jump and stuff, because I was pretty good at it, I guess. But it wasn't really till I got my first running blade when I was 12 where I really wanted to do track and was really interested in it, and actually started to do sprinting. I joined the Phoenix Athletics Track Club in Scarborough after I got my first running blade. And I don't know, I just I did it as another sport at the time. I did it along with basketball and soccer. I was doing 3 competitive sports at once. And I really just loved the idea of track. I didn't know what opportunities lay ahead, or what for someone like myself with a disability, what that meant. Yeah. I always thought I was going to be on Team Canada for soccer. That was my goal when I was younger, and what I dreamed about. But then I actually started training in track, and I didn't really like to run all that much before I got a running blade. That's why I really liked the long jump. But the coach I was training with at the club said, you need to be fast to do long jump. So started to train me like a sprinter. And then from there, I never really went back to long jump. I kind of revisited it a little bit in high school, but I think the 100 and 200 really sparked my interest, and it all kind of happened from there.
You mentioned you wanted to play soccer. Is there anything that you learned from soccer that translated to track?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think just the whole idea of sport in general, winning, losing, how to be a good teammate, how to be a leader, how to step up when, maybe your other teammates are struggling. And track is very different, obviously, because it's an individual sport. But I think definitely in terms of, being a good teammate, there's other people I still train with, and we're in a big training group. It's those lessons and the value of just sport in general that I think has helped me with track. But also I think growing up playing able-bodied sports, that was also a really big deal for me, because I think it just taught me to push myself to that next level all the time, and to have to keep up with my peers and try to be a little bit better all the time. I think that's what's also helped me excel in the sport as well, is just that drive and push to never give up and to always succeed no matter what.
Yeah, definitely. You got it.
Okay, great. So we had a question about track, and basically, does your passion for track come from, a fascination with the sport? I know obviously you just talked about the other sports that you played, but have you always kind of had a fascination for track, or was it kind of one of those things that you felt, was really able to, let your competitive side out?
It's a good question. I think I always really did like track. But I think it went back to just not really knowing the opportunities that existed with it, not really knowing a whole lot about the Paralympics or that side of what this sport offers. But I was always so interested and so fascinated with how fast people can move their bodies. There was a lot of instances throughout my young childhood where my father would bring me to track meets, because he used to be a vice principal at this high school, And there was one particular athlete, Marlon Allen. He was one of the fastest athletes in Canada when he was 16 years old. And so my dad supported him and would go out to his meets and he would take me with him. And I think that was something that kind of really sparked my interest in seeing how cool it is to be a 100-meter runner. Like all eyes are on you, and it's just like you're in the spotlight for 10 seconds, and it's a really cool kind of moment. So I think that also, like, the glamorous side of the sport was really attractive to me when I was younger, and it was pretty cool to be like part of that growing up as well.
Nice.
Definitely. And I read that you prefer the 200 over the 100. Is there like a reason for that, or?
I've had like a different relationship, I think, with both of the races. Going into last year, definitely the 200 was my preferred event, mostly because of, like, I had a higher ranking in it. I've historically performed better in the 200, but I think the way my coach had like prepared me for last season, he really did make me a 100-meter sprinter. And that obviously showed in Tokyo. I wasn't expecting that. So I would say right now I'm preferring the 100, but I do really love the 200 as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell us a little bit about their experience in Tokyo. Obviously, you medaled third place. How was that just like experience of just finishing the race to getting that medal placed around your neck? It had to be a crazy experience. I just want to hear a little bit about it.
It really was. And honestly, looking back, that whole process from like the start of that race to like me receiving my medal, it's like very euphoric thinking about it, because I felt like it was this out of body experience that I just like couldn't believe was taking place. I mean, I could believe it, but like also it was surprising at the same time, because I went into this Paralympic Games not really thinking about the tangible outcome at the end of like winning a medal, when in previous years I focused a lot on that. And it stressed me out, gave me anxiety, did not lead to good performances. That's where going into that competition, I completely took the pressure off of like the tangible reward. And I just focused it back on like running my personal best. So every single race I went into, I just said, I'm going to run my personal best. And that's what I focused on. And I focused on the space in between the two lines that I stood in on the track. And that's all that I could ever control. It was frustrating that in previous times you could still have a good race, but someone beside you could also have a great race. Right. And like, you cannot control that. You have no control over anything that happens outside of those two lines. And so I didn't think about the medal, and I didn't think about that reward. I thought about myself and doing my very personal best. And I thought, like, if that lands me on the podium, that's fantastic. Right. But if not, that's also okay too, because that's all I ever asked of myself, was to run my personal best. And I did that in every single race. So I did say this after my race, that if I hadn't medaled, it wouldn't have, it didn't gratify my experience any more than I had already had until that point. And so I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, it was a little bit unexpected. It was obviously a goal and like very tangible and very realistic, but it was something that I was keeping, at bay and not really thinking about all the time, to make sure that I put myself in the best possible position to perform to the best of my ability on that day. Yeah, no, I can relate to that big time, because especially me, when I started playing pro in late May, I was really just thinking like, I got to get these stats so that these scouts can look at me, or you know what I mean? And it's like, it puts a lot of pressure on yourself. It is stressful, because then after the game, you're like, I didn't do as well as I wanted to. And then you start thinking, no, now no one's going to want me on their team. And I think that's just like a great mindset to have. Even like your TikToks and stuff, like we've talked about how sometimes the result isn't really the main focus. Like, it's just being present and, just kind of focusing on what you have to do. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, we've had two artists on the show recently, and they both said the same thing. Like, their biggest song that did the best, or they're big on TikTok as well. So, like, whatever cover they would do that did the best, they weren't trying to make, like, anything crazy. They kind of just let go and, like what you said, just control what you can control. Back to Tokyo, is there a place that you've been, like, that track has taken you that's been like the most memorable? I would definitely say Rio in 2016, that was my first Paralympic Games. That was memorable. Getting to see Brazil a little bit and, just experiencing the games at such a young age. But yeah, I would say Rio was really memorable. I would also say like the London 2017 World Championships was also a really great competition. I mean, I didn't have a great race. I tore my hamstring in that event, but like it was the overall experience of competing in London, England, in Olympic Stadium where the 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games were held. That's what showed me the possibilities in track and field, especially for para athletes. And, that's when you saw Oscar Pistorius running in the Olympic 400 meter as well as the Paralympic 400 meter and stuff like that happening. So that was also a pretty cool moment in my career as well. So I would say those two places were definitely my favorites.
Yeah. No, that's what's up.
As a high-level athlete, when this is taking it back to a few years when COVID hit and it was really hard to find training, was it harder, you think, physically to stay in shape or mentally to stay engaged and want to wake up every morning and be like, oh, I'm going to try to do something with limited, equipment or whatever? Was it more difficult for physical or mental for you?
That's an interesting question because I feel like I had a very interesting relationship with the pandemic and just like training and how my whole process went. Given that from 2016 to 2019, I just had year after year of like disappointment and injuries. I think that like going into 2020, I really reshifted my focus on my mental approach to things. And it was just like kind of going back to what we had mentioned before about like just being present and focusing on the moment and like what you can control. And so that was what I was like trying to manifest for myself and channel going into 2020. And then when the pandemic hit, it was kind of like, okay, like this is another, bump in the road on this journey. It's not really a big deal. We can work with it. And I think that really allowed me to just like let go of the uncontrollable. And then it also gave me so much time to just like really take a step back and process all of the things I had encountered up until that point, like multiple hamstring tears, performing on the world stage at a very young age, having some of the attention that I had when I was 16, 17, 18 years old. And I really started to like process those things and come to term with those things. And that like time off really allowed me to do that. In terms of training, it was definitely, I can't like sugarcoat it. It wasn't easy by any means. Like I was lifting weights in my basement, when I kind of saw the trend of like the shutdown, I called my parents immediately and I said, we need to get a full gym in the basement. Like yeah. No way I can do without, you can do without the running and the training sometimes, but the strength training, like if you lose that, it's really hard to get back. So
for sure.
I would say I'm very thankful that I had my sister through that process because obviously there were some days where I was like, I don't want to work out. Like I can just sit on my couch and watch TV all day.
Exactly.
And it's fine because I don't have anything to like really stress about right now. But, she really held me accountable and like got me up when I was having those moments and just like worked out with me or like got me to hop on the exercise bike that we had and just like bang out a workout. The hardest part, I think, mentally was in 2021 when things were open again. So I had access to my training facility and there was only 10 people allowed in the facility at a time. So you're talking like you're doing repeat 200s. You are at the point of like wanting to give up, dying, and there's nobody else there. Like it's just your coach and maybe like one or two other athletes.
Yeah, it's tough.
That day after day after day really started to get to myself and my other training partners, like emotionally and mentally.
Mm-hmm.
So when we decided to do something about that, we left the country and we stayed away for like 6 weeks at a time. And that was really hard because you're on the road. You're obviously worried about getting COVID because this was like pre-vaccination. So it's like you get COVID and you don't know how it's going to affect you, especially as a runner. So there was like a lot of really stressful kind of moments we went through and like being on the road for the amount of time I did and then coming home and quarantining because like there were so many strict rules in place. I would say 2021 was the hardest because we knew that the Paralympics were in the summer. They were going to happen. So we had to get ready the best we could. And so I think a lot of that was mental. We had the physical access to the training. We were putting in the physical work every single day, but it was the mental part And then there was also like not knowing if we even had races to run back in Canada. So when I came home from San Diego, I was there for quite a while because I went there because that's where all the races were. And it was just a really convenient at Chula Vista, like the athletic training center. I just stayed there and knew that there were going to be races, but then I got injured when I was there. So I couldn't even run. Then it got to a point where I was like, I'm getting like road weary. I need to go home. And then everyone, and it was hard listening to everyone that was there telling me, you shouldn't go home. Like you might not even have a race to run. And then what are you going to do? Come back and then have to quarantine again for 2 weeks and then miss out on another 2 weeks of training. And I took that risk because that was like, I need to be with my family. I need to have that support system that I'm used to and that comfort. And I'm sure there'll be a race.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of things. And
right.
And I guess to go back to your question, like mentally was the most challenging aspect of the last 2 years.
For sure.
Do you think it was more challenging to get over like the COVID time period or to get over like your setbacks in terms of injuries or like you had a false start where you stepped on a line in one of your races? Do you think that was harder mentally to like overcome and adapt than COVID or the other way around?
I think that I struggled more with like overcoming all those injuries and like setbacks versus COVID because COVID kind of happened after all of those things. And I think it really, I try to look at the positives in every situation. And so I looked at it as like an opportunity to recover and to like reflect and to take time for myself. So I didn't really view it as a big negative thing. And again, like, because I also encountered all those things and then COVID hit, it was like, I'm like, I've seen it all at this point. Like it doesn't faze me anymore. So
Definitely.
yeah, that's kind of how I view it.
Okay, fair enough. So you're interested in broadcasting too, I read before, right?
Yeah.
So I read that like because of, I think it was the Rio coverage, like there was a lack of coverage on Paralympic athletes as opposed to Olympic athletes. So was it like things that they said or was it just that they didn't cover it at all?
It was not covered at all in Rio. It was even difficult to find an online stream for people to watch. That changed a lot in the last couple years with like the winter and summer games, which is really great to see. It's trending in the right direction. But yeah, that's what really sparked my interest to get into broadcast and media was in 2016, and why I went to school at Ryerson to study sports media was because I really wanted to be able to advocate for the lack of Paralympic coverage that, you know, we were experiencing in the past. And again, it's trending in the right direction. There's so much more exposure, so much more coverage, especially for Canadian athletes. You know, I think it was us lagging behind the rest of the world as well. We were seeing like other countries like the US and Great Britain really stepping up and supporting our Paralympic athletes. But Canada now in the past couple of years has also done the same. So it's good to see that difference.
You mentioned they've made a lot of progress. Where do you think they could continue to make even more progress?
It's a good question. I think it's a double-edged sword. So on the athletes front, I think more para athletes need to be held accountable to really uplift their own platforms and have a voice and get their brand out there per se, as we see like Olympic athletes do. And that's something I've been trying really hard with over the last few years and continue to hopefully build my brand and get awareness out and help build the Paralympic movement. But also on the media side, it's really just about exposure at the end of the day. It's creating the creative content that people want to see. It's creating the stories and really bringing those to life, because everyone has really amazing stories, but on the Paralympic side, you have some really incredible moments of adversity that's been overcome. And so I think like certain things like that, it's really cool to see those things and hear those things on a regular basis, and being exposed to those stories. It's very inspiring and it's very uplifting. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to the fact that they are just incredible athletes. And I think that story also needs to be told. It's athletes that have a disability, and that's it.
Yeah, definitely. We can both agree that it's very like inspiring, not just your story, but all of their stories. And I definitely agree with you when you say like it's up to the athlete to build their brand, and you've done a great job at that. We actually didn't know that you were the first female Canadian athlete to be sponsored by Nike. So what was like your initial reaction when that happened?
Yeah, I mean, being the first like Canadian para female athlete to be sponsored by Nike was definitely an incredible moment for myself, but I also feel like it was really a great moment in Canadian sport because it just opened up a door now for so many others, hopefully in the future. The fact that I'm the first and it was 2019 when I signed, it's kind of crazy, like it took that long and Nike really did take a chance on myself. I hadn't had really many stats to give them at the time. They were just like, we believe in you, we trust your story, and we want to support you. That felt really good for me, obviously, because you growing up, you see those Serena Williams ads on television with Nike and just seeing that and envisioning that for myself. And now that I'm intertwined with the brand and being a part of that is just like, it's an incredible feeling, and it's been an incredible journey. I've done some pretty cool things with the company. I got to go to actually Portland last week to visit Nike headquarters. I spoke to the staff there about, women's initiatives in sport. And I got to walk actually in Nike's fashion show during New York Fashion Week in 2020, right before the COVID shutdown. So that was also a very incredible experience as well. You're walking in a fashion show with like some incredible Nike athletes that I looked up to. I stood in a photo shoot beside Caster Semenya, who's like an incredible icon in track and field, and just experiencing all that was really awesome. So I'm just like super grateful to be part of the brand and to also have Nike part of like the Paralympic movement in Canada and kind of just like uplifting athletes with disabilities as well.
Right on.
Yeah,
that's
crazy.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah, I would probably be freaking out if I was at Nike headquarters and like walk around and see, hey, you see LeBron or you see like KD or something.
See Steph Smith.
Stop it.
Do you get any like gear sent to you and stuff?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest perks, I would say.
She has a lot of gear.
It can be a little excessive. I have like my mini shoe wall that's like building behind me.
A shoe wall, yeah, that's a lot of gear.
It doesn't get old, opening a box all the time. It's always like Christmas.
Yeah.
They also have like the coolest stuff, so you really cannot complain. And even just some of the innovation sometimes is really cool to kind of be like one of the first to have, like even when we were sprinting on those like bubble carbon fiber plated spikes last year, like myself and, other Nike athletes, of course, like we were some of the first people in the world to get to use these things. So I think like that's also really cool to be a part of innovation like that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
You know that our special guest here actually has a mural at Bill Crothers. Do you like?
I didn't know that.
I just want to let you know, like, who we're talking with. Just to make sure you understand.
Okay, bet. I gotta soak it all in now. I'm starstruck.
Yeah. So another thing that we notice is that you work with a lot of brands on social media with your TikTok, Instagram, stuff like that. So what's like your favorite way of getting in touch with specific brands? Do you do that yourself? Do you have someone, maybe on your marketing team or agency or whatever help you kind of get those deals? Like what does that look like?
So when I was younger, a lot of that stuff was like kind of just like who approached me, and my dad kind of like played manager, I guess, for the time being. And then when things kind of started to get out of hand, I got involved with Envision Sports and Entertainment, which is a sports marketing agency in Canada. They represent Christine Sinclair, Andre DeGrasse, Alicia Newman, Pierce Lepage, just to name some of the athletes that they represent. And I was their first para athlete that they wanted to partner with. Brian Levine's my agent, and he approached me and was like, hey, I really, again, believe in your story and think that we can do some really awesome things in the future. I know you want to get into broadcast, and I think this could be a really great long-term thing, even when you're done track and field and want to get into broadcasting. And so, yeah, it was really in a really organic partnership. And I really appreciate everything they do because they manage so much for me and make a lot of stuff happen, and also give me the opportunity to do this sport full time and professionally and make a living off of it so that I can achieve my goal of hopefully being the fastest woman on a blade one day.
Nice. Love that.
So from like a content creation standpoint, I've seen that you're really big on TikTok, and you get like a lot of interesting like questions in your comments. There's one that I seen about your prosthetic leg and like how it works when you run and everything. What would you say is like your favorite question that you've been asked on social media?
That's a good question. So I wouldn't say my TikTok's like really big. It's okay. It's not bad. I just like play around with it and stuff. But I appreciate the.
You're verified though on TikTok, right?
Yeah, she's verified, so you know she's good.
Okay, yeah.
Now we can thank my manager for that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think like social media is a very, again, we go back to like the building the brand and getting Paralympic sport out there. You know, you have a demographic on TikTok that is the next generation. And when you're exposing them to that content, it's really incredible because they're now going to see, you know, someone running with a prosthetic as a normal thing.
Yeah.
Whereas like growing up, I didn't even see that as a normal thing, right? And I was one of those people. And so I think like getting questions is really great because it means people are interested and they want to know more and they just want to educate themselves. And so I think like the best question I probably get is like, how does the prosthetic work?
Okay.
And it sounds so simple, but I think again, it's a great opportunity to educate people because it's a device that again it's not seen every day. It's not on their television screens necessarily all the time. And so I think just like explaining to people how it works, it might be really simple. It might be maybe complicated to them, but just explaining that and sharing my lived experience with running as a person with a disability is, I think, important. But then I also like to share with other people that my lived experience is really different from someone else's lived experience with a disability. You know, we all walk through this life in different shoes. And I think it's important to communicate and educate people on the fact that everyone does have a different lived experience. So sometimes maybe asking me a certain question might be okay, but maybe asking someone else that doesn't feel as comfortable might not be okay as well. So it's just all part of it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. All right, so the final question that we have for you, when it's all said and done, outside of like your achievements and accolades, like what's like the legacy that you want to leave behind for, you know, kids looking up to you, people that, you know, when they mention your name, what kind of legacies that look like?
That's a very powerful question. And this is something that actually is like a big motivator for me. You know, when people ask me, what motivates you to keep going every single day? It's to leave this space, this Paralympic track space, better than it started and where I started. And hopefully that the next generation of athletes that come through have more opportunities than I even did. And I feel that way about, you know, the athletes that kind of came before me as well, you know, like April Holmes from the US, who was the first woman on a blade to run under 13 seconds in the 100 meter. And so now that time is like,
right,
it's something that, you know, the whole field is able to run. And it's crazy to think that, and just like pushing those boundaries and really showing other young people out there the possibilities and the opportunities that exist within this space. Just because you're born differently or you've encountered something that's different and not quote unquote normal, there are so many opportunities that exist for people like you. And I hope to be able to share that with others and to be able to, again, to keep growing my platform, to inspire others, to get involved, to do sport, to move your body, to be physically fit and active. Because at the end of the day, that's really what it's about. It's being able to enjoy and have fun. And so that's something that I would like to leave behind.
Very well spoken.
Very, very well.
Very well spoken.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Thank you.
Well, you've been a great guest. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully, in the future, when you get a few more medals, you'll come back on.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thank you to everyone watching. This has been the Connecting Creators podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.